And then I thought, well, this is going to be me the rest of my life. I want to do this for the rest of my life. And so I wanted to think of a way, how could I make my quilt so that people knew an Anishinaabek made them? It wasn't necessary for them to know it was Alice Williams, but I just wanted them to know it was Anishinaabek.
Welcome back to the Aging Vibrantly podcast. I'm Rayanne Rideout, the host of the show, where we amplify the voices of seniors and leaders in the field of aging, who impart their expertise and wisdom to enhance our understanding of aging issues and ways of living a safe and fulfilling life with respect and dignity. In this episode, we listen, learn, and share as our guests stitch together stories from an Anishinaabe view on aging well. We hear the powerful personal stories and insights from Alice Olsen Williams, a renowned quiltmaker who shares her wisdom and knowledge and learnings from participating in Trent University's Aging and Society projects, including the Anishinaabe Indigenous Intergenerational Growing Old Gathering and the Aging Vitality Storytelling Project. We are honored to have Alice share her documentary in this interview, which was screened at the Reframe Film Festival in Peterborough. Alice, who is known for her quilts, speaks to us about the meanings behind her quilt making that share her Anishinaabe heritage, traditions, and raise awareness about vital Indigenous concerns and history, with reflections on social issues and human rights stories. Listeners will sense the passion and love Alice has for quilting. You can feel the hours she has done with her needles as she speaks about her quilting collection of over 550 quilts she's created. We learn what it means to grow older while navigating the ongoing impacts of settler colonialization and the systemic barriers of settler practices and structures. Personal stories shared from the hearts of our guests enlighten us on how aging in Indigenous communities is grounded in roots of relationships, intergenerational connections, and storytelling. We explore the importance of Indigenous values and teachings of growing older by respecting and learning from elders as vital knowledge holders, honoring their wisdom and resilience. As we continue our learning, research, and care for aging well with Indigenous and non-Indigenous peoples working together, we can engage in meaningful interactions and reconciliation to support healthy aging, moving forward in a good way. I need to our guests who we are honored to have joined us. Our first guest, Alice Olsen Williams, is a renowned artist and quilt maker and member of the Oshkiigmong Curve Lake First Nations. Alice was born in Trout Lake in the traditional territory of her mother's people from time beyond memory. She received her teaching certificate from Lakehead University in Thunder Bay. Having taught in Thunder Bay and at the Potawatomi First Nations, Alice and her husband Doug moved to Curve Lake First Nations just north of Peterborough, Nogojiwanong, Ontario, where Doug was born and raised. While looking after their 4 children and their home, Alice completed her BA from Trent University in Native Studies and Sociology, as well as developing her skills in beadwork and sewing. In 1980, she discovered quilting, mastering the techniques which allowed her to create meticulous hand quilting in her beautiful bed coverings and wall hangings. Gradually, Alice formed the concepts which would be the basis for her distinctive style and work. Blending her cultural heritage into a unified whole, she envisions the central motif to depict the symbols and the themes of Anishinaabe culture, surrounded by the conventional North American quilting blocks and patterns, which were developed and continue to evolve by those women and their descendants who came to this land from Europe, the legacy of her father's people. Through her understanding of the teachings of the elders, Alice has created her own life symbol. She continues to grow as an artist, searching for new ways to express the spirit of creation in the images of her designs. So welcome, Alice. Along with Alice is Nadine Changfoot, who is a full professor of political studies on the Executive Trent Centre for Aging and Society at the Trent University in Peterborough, Nogojiwanong, Ontario, Northern Turtle Island, known as Canada. She is deeply moved by storytelling and creative methods and processes that bring to light experiences and visions of social equity and kinder, more livable worlds. She has published widely in journals of arts, community development, community engaged research, philosophy, political science, and sociology. Recent and current research involves rethinking artful politics, bodies of difference, remaking body worlds, and critical methodologies in dementia studies. She supports artists and the arts and culture in Peterborough and serves as a board member on the Peterborough Arts Council called EC3, Electric City Culture and Council. Lastly, I want to introduce my co-host, Debra Sayewich, a member of the Wasauksing First Nations, Potawatomi Nation, Robertson Huron Treaty 1850. And she is also a member of our Senior Advisory Committee. So welcome everyone to the podcast today. So maybe we can start with Nadine and just talking about the work that you're doing at Trent University, at the Trent Aging on Society, and what the mission is and the program that you're running. And just to give our listeners some idea about what's happening at that university and how unique it is within Ontario or within Canada of the work that you're doing with Indigenous elders.
Okay, thanks very much, Rayanne. Yes, my name is Nadine Changfoot, and I'm happy to share that there are two key parts of the mission for the Trent Centre for Aging and Society. It gathers faculty, students, and staff from across the humanities, the social sciences, and the sciences, as well as community stakeholders and researchers to build really meaningful dialogue that challenges. It challenges entrenched ideas about aging, old age, and older people, including ageist practices in our communities and culture. That's the first. And then the second is that the Trent Centre for Aging and Society seeks to celebrate and understand diverse experiences of aging. And in terms of we have about 20 to 30 faculty engaged in research across the social sciences and humanities. And the work that I do bridges the social sciences and the humanities in that I do arts-based research, which aims to put the technology of creating digital stories or short films into the hands of older people and elders so that they can create their own short multimedia documentaries of their lived experience to push back against ageism, as well as to celebrate their diverse experiences of aging. As well, I'm engaged in research that supports Anishinaabek, especially of Curve Lake First Nation, so that members of Curve Lake First Nation, through one of the research projects called Oshkiigmong to put into a long-lasting format knowledge of their experience, of their lived experiences, or Anishinaabe knowledge.
So tell us about this project, its purpose, and some of the outcomes and the impact.
Thank you, Debra. So I'd like to start by sharing of the Aging Vitalities storytelling project, which occurred in around 2019-2020. And what has been missing within scholarship as well as within the public mainstream are many diverse representations and experiences of aging. Within the mainstream, we mostly see examples of what is referred to as successful aging, where it's mostly white settler, well-resourced, very healthy, very financially resourced, who are represented. And yet this is a very partial representation of the many experiences of aging. And so Aging Vitalities wanted to contribute to the pluralization or to the diversification of aging experiences. So in this project, about 12 diverse older women came together to each make their own short multimedia documentary or digital story around their choice of their experience of aging. And what was important for this storytelling workshop was having both settler as well as Anishinaabek making their stories together in one room, in one studio workshop. And some of the outcomes of the storytelling workshop was that in bringing together settler women, diverse settler women, and Anishinaabek, some generative discussions took place around the importance of understanding, especially on settler experience, upon settler persons' experiences, the importance of more deeply understanding and the importance of the openness of learning around the impact, the violent impacts of settler colonialism, as well as in terms of, through that learning, beginning to consider future actions, for example, for meaningful interactions and reconciliation along the lines of truth and reconciliation. As well, in terms of aging, the digital stories or the short multimedia documentaries that were created by the diverse older women and elders in the workshop showed how it's so important to create space for disabled experiences of aging, as well as queer representations of aging, in addition to Anishinaabek and Indigenous representations of growing old and aging. And one of the impacts was to bring this learning through the beautiful short multimedia documentaries and digital stories to Reframe Film Festival. So all the stories, all the digital stories, all the short multimedia documentaries or short films were accepted by jury decision to Reframe Film Festival, and they were screened to full houses. And they were screened, importantly, with Alice Olsen Williams, Ann Taylor, and Angela Connor's short films in a screening that centered Anishinaabek and Indigenous experiences. And then the settler older women's experience, the settler older women's digital stories were screened in a different screening, and both to very full houses. And so I think it was really important to center the Anishinaabek films at the Reframe Film Festival, and this occurred in 2020. So I have the short multimedia documentary or the digital story that was created by Alice Olsen Williams, and she's here today.
Alice, as we are both Anishinaabe, what do you want settlers to start thinking about as we watch this digital project?
how we can have a good, appreciative life with very little. That's it.
Great. I'm looking forward to watching the film. I did attend the Reframe Festival and did see this documentary film when it was initially live for everyone to see at the film festival. So I'm looking forward to seeing it again.
Oshkiigmong and Nogojiwanong, the smell of moose meat smoking over a smoking fire. I forget how long the smoking of the meat lasts, but when it's done, it is put into a big cloth bag. My Mashomasiban sat on the ground waiting for the smoked meat to get done and to have the bag that was meant for it to be given to him. He would sit there. I remember his leg couldn't be bent. I don't remember how he got that stiff leg, but that's how I see him as he sits on the ground, on the rock. My grandfather seemed to have the job of making Nogojiwanong, that is pounding the smoked meat until it turned into flour. He used a special round rock, and he did have a little hammer. The rock and hammer were placed on a white sheet, I'd say about 3 by 3 feet of fabric, of white fabric. He also had a white cloth over his lap and knees. He'd take the dried moose meat and pound it with his little hammer on the round rock as the pieces powdered away. The Nogojiwanong would slowly pile higher and higher, and the smell of that made me want to eat it right away. But I waited till my Mishomis had enough of a pile so that he could dump what was on the white cloth, and he would fill the Nogojiwanong into a bowl. The Nogojiwanong and butter and lard were placed in the center. When it was time to eat, everyone sat on blankets in a circle. The Nogojiwanong and butter was passed around. As the Nogojiwanong came to each person, so did the lard and the butter. Somehow, as we picked it up with our fingers, we were able to compress it in our fingertips, and it stayed in place as we passed it over the butter or lard. Then we put it in our mouths. It was so tasty, you couldn't help but want more. Myself, I wanted more all the time.
Miigwech, Alice. Beautiful, beautiful. What a gorgeous story, and miigwech for sharing. And that's how our stories are shared. What do you think settlers need to know about growing old with our Anishinaabe people? May I add just a little few words before we get some wisdom from you? I always ask everybody to listen to our pause. Our pause is important. Listen to our pause, but listen with 2 ears and 1 mouth. Take the time, believe our stories. We have many years. We have stories that are transferred, and they're our stories. They're our stories that we share with our future generations and generations yet to come. But Alice, what is your vision as Anishinaabe as we grow old together?
I don't live in the community where I was born and raised. So it's always interesting as an Anishinaabe woman to meet other Anishinaabe who live in a different community. And I like the sharing that we do, both verbally and materially. And we just share. We share in a I don't we share. Well, maybe you can help me here, Debra. We share in a different way, I think. Like in our daily lives. Like I think when I see settler women sharing, I don't feel they share the same way. The sharing is different. Say even just talking and visiting. I guess that's what I mean. Visiting, when we visit each other as Anishinaabe people.
Yes.
I don't know, is there an earthiness towards it? And
It's
I would say that because especially when I first came here, a lot of the visiting happened outside. Like it happened outside, and everybody knew what to do. Like everybody knew this is what you do when somebody comes. And it was very not structured, I guess. I don't know, maybe there's a better word. Can you enlighten me on how to explain that?
Well, I feel as we were raised, people we come into this world in a good way. And our vision, our mission, our goals, our values, our family is our priority. As women, we come together. We are the leaders within community, within family. But when we share from the heart. Our laughter is sincere. Our laughter is a healing, whether it's a memory, if it's a lived experience, but if it's a joy and that smile and the reflection, but the pause. But it's taking the time to sit in circle, and we don't have to have the conversation, but sitting together in circle in a good way and just being together as one. We understand. We're not putting up an artificial presence. And it's not what's in it for me. It's how can we help? How can we assist? And unfortunately, colonialism has come into this society, and the whole progress is to move forward in a good way. And the pathway of reconciliation is working together as our Indigenous and non-Indigenous populations, and your story sharing. And we look forward to the next part of continuing this conversation with your stories of your quilts. But always remember, the stories that we share are our stories. They're not stories that can be changed and have names put to them. Our stories are our stories. Miigwech. So, Alice, I'd like to ask about your unique arts. advocacy and public speaking has brought together our Indigenous and non-Indigenous knowledges, and we're intertwining our experiences today. But your quilting has an effective, powerful, and benefit in reaching in our Indigenous and non-Indigenous settlers here. You're known for your quilts, and they are beautiful. They tell a story we admire. You're known as the prolific quilter. Your hands, I can feel them. I can feel the hours that you've done with your needles. And how many quilts have you created, may I ask?
Oh, yes, probably. I would say I have made a good maybe 550.
Wow.
But I didn't do everything. I have a system where I make the front, and I put the 3 layers together for a quilt, for each quilt, and then I send them off to people I know who love to quilt. I'd love to do it too, but then if I had to quilt my own, I couldn't do as many as I have done.
That's a process, and that's what we call circle, and that's what we call family, because everybody is stitching their love into the story. And that's what we do. We do well. You're the quilt lady, Kwe, Anishinaabe Kwe quilter, and we look forward to sharing and seeing some of these quilts that we're going to have in this podcast presentation. So we look forward to telling us a little bit more about some of your quilts that you've created.
Well, I discovered that I loved quilting when I was about 34, 35. And like before that, I didn't know that I would love quilting. And so I made quilts like using patterns that quilters use. And then I thought, well, this is going to be me the rest of my life. I want to do this for the rest of my life. And so I wanted to think of a way, how could I make my quilt so that people knew an Anishinaabek made them. It wasn't necessary for them to know it was Alice Williams, but I just wanted them to know it was Anishinaabek. So I thought I first of all I wanted to put my heritage in my quilts, like my mother being Anishinaabe and being of this land and for thousands of years. And then my dad coming from Oslo, Norway, represents that part of my heritage. And so I put them both in my quilts, and so that the Anishinaabe picture, and it's those beings that what's the word?
May I ask, Alice, are you talking about the creation of the beautiful, healthy land, healthy people? The Community Quilt Project?
Oh, no, I wasn't talking about that one. No, I was just talking about the quilt, one quilt I make, the quilts I make. Like those kind of quilts are made, the blocks, the pictures are made by other people, and I put them together. I ask I put out a call for quilt blocks, and I tell what I want to show. That one about healthy land and healthy people was for the minister's first ministers conference. And you're only seeing a part of that quilt, right? Did you know that? That's only a part of the quilt. So I got those blocks from different Anishinaabe women from across Canada. And some of them are Inuit too. So my idea was, when I heard about the first ministers conference in Kelowna.
Yeah.
And at that time, it seems like, it comes in waves. What the government is concentrating on. And at that time, they were talking about healthy land and healthy people. And so I was thinking about, there are many, many, many Anishinaabeg who have ideas about how to have healthy land and healthy people. And I thought I really want their voices heard. The Anishinaabe women, mostly, although some need blocks also. But so I was thinking, how can I make those Anishinaabe women's voices heard? And so that's what I thought I'd do, is send out a call for quilt blocks about what they would like people to know about what their ideas of healthy land and healthy people. So that's how that quilt came to be. People, I think there's 40 blocks in that quilt. And it's I just put it together. That's what I did. Although some of the blocks are mine.
You are a perfect storyteller by sharing this incredible healthy land and healthy people.
I wanted to make sure that it was in the rooms where the premiers met, and I think that was the first year that we all knew about Anishinaabeg wanting their organizations to be represented at the first ministers' meetings. And I made sure that it was profiled. So it was there somewhere at the conference.
Yes, yes. Definitely sharing that we are the people of the land, and that our health relies on the health of our environment and our surroundings, and how we are the care stewards, the caretakers of the land, but together we are one and we are strong. Would you be able to share a little bit more about one of the other quilts that you have created? The Sisters in Spirit Traveling, another community quilt.
Yes, I made that for the national, what is it? NWAC, the National Women's Association. No, Native Women's Association of Canada.
Yes.
I think. Yes, they were heavily profiled for the missing and murdered Indigenous women. And so I thought, well, I would gather blocks and make a quilt, a working quilt. We called that a working quilt. And what that meant was if the organization was going to do a presentation about missing and murdered Indigenous women, or even just Sisters in Spirit, or even just NWAC, that they use that quilt to profile what they were about. And again, I put out a call for blocks, and I put them together and gave it to NWAC for them to use.
And as you saw say, the story's never finished, and unfortunately, to this day, it continues. So miigwech for starting to bring the awareness to our sisters in spirit.
And each of those community quilts, each block has a story. So the women who made their individual block has a story, and I understand that the stories are in a binder and go along with the quilt, so people can read the stories.
And I feel that we have one more quilt that's very important that we share, and that's our quilts and human rights. And it's been recently on display at the ROM, the Royal Ontario Museum here in Toronto. The Tree of Peace saves the earth. Can you tell us about that quilt?
Now, I made that quilt myself. It's not a community quilt. Yes, I was in the year of Oka, when all those terrible, terrible settler things were imposed on Anishinaabek, on Mohawk people, people of Oka in that area. And I was thinking, how can I maybe help with people understanding what that was about? And so I made that quilt with the Mohawk teaching about how the white pine, there's 4 roots, and it's on the back of a turtle. And at the top of the white pine is an eagle, the eagle that looks after us and carries our prayers. And then I have the 4 directions.
Yes.
Which guide us on how to live to live in a good way on this earth. And also the sun. The sun is a life giver. And so I have that white pine going through the Peace Tower. And as it's growing up through the Peace Tower, it's crumbling the building. And because the way of peace is shared with us through the stories of the Mohawks and the Iroquois, and I have it coming through the Peace Tower just because also the Peace Tower has not brought us peace. That their teachings do not bring peace or make way for peace. But the teachings of the Mohawk Tree of Peace does show us we can live in a peaceful way. And then I have the clock there. The clock is just a couple of minutes to the 11th hour.
Yes.
And And also the flag on top of the Peace Tower is also kind of messed up a bit because what has the flag done for Anishinaabeg?
That's a never-ending question, isn't it, Alice?
Well,
This
we know.
is an incredible piece of work. It's an incredible story. And you created this story of this beautiful tree of peace?
No, that's a story that's been passed.
No, but when did you create this quilt?
Around 1990, around the time of Oka.
Okay, all right, yes. But as we know, our eagle, which you've put on top of the Peace Tower, is the eagle that flies closest to Creator, and it watches above. So miigwech for sharing.
And the teachings continue to talk about under the turtle are buried implements of war.
Yes.
One of them happens to be a one of the implements of war is a war club. What's it called? War club.
Thank you for sharing the stories and the meaning behind them. I think there's so much richness of that, and I think, as Debra reflected on, they still are relevant today, right? This is more than 15 years ago, but some of these quilts that you've made that are still relevant to our discussions that we're having now.
Right.
As when thinking the protection of our lands and our waters and as we move forward. So they're everlasting, I think, in terms of the work that you're doing. So miigwech, and to be commended for all of the work that you're doing and still carrying on that message and teachings to this day that we can all still learn from, I think is to be commended. So thank you for sharing that. And I encourage our listeners to go and look them up. There's the websites there, but we'll put in our show notes so you can further read more of the story behind Alice's work, because there's many of the other quilts that she has made that are on different parts of the internet, different museums that have showcased that have much more detail of interviews with Alice about the quilts as well that you might learn from as well that we may not cover today in our interview. So thank you. So Alice, you've also, and Nadine, both of you have been involved in some intergenerational work at Trent, and hosted a conference, some workshops recently on intergenerational growing older or aging together, called AIIGO, I think is what Nadine had indicated what the short form is. Nadine, maybe you can give us a little bit of background about what that, how that started. How do you develop the need for having a workshop on bringing together different generations and the knowledge sharing between settlers and Indigenous elders? And Alice, I know you were involved in that workshop, and maybe just give us some context to what that was about and what you learned from that, and if it's continuing to evolve after that, because it was just done, I think, within the last year or two.
Thank you, Rayanne. Yes, the gathering was titled Anishinaabe, Indigenous Intergenerational Growing Old, Aging, or as you said, AIIGO. It was held this year in January 2025 at the Peterborough Public Library. And the main goals of the event were to create intergenerational dialogue between elders, youth, researchers, and community members. Another goal was to integrate Indigenous values such as spiritual, emotional, cultural, and environmental into understanding and practices of growing old and aging. We brought together growing old with a / aging, because in speaking with Anishinaabek of Curve Lake, growing old is the phrase used around growing old compared to aging, which is very, very often used within post-secondary institutions. We wanted to bring community-centered conversations that decolonize research on growing old and aging and promote more meaningful inclusivity, as well as share knowledge and experiences around Indigenous growing old and aging. So I'll say that again, share knowledge and experiences around Indigenous growing old, aging with the audience. To why we wanted to enhance public understanding, as well as to create connections among Indigenous and settler participants to promote ongoing collaboration and advocacy. So those were the goals of AIIGO. And in terms of some of the community impact, what the gathering comprised of two key events. The morning keynote panel, which included Sandra Moore, a counselor of Hiawatha First Nation and a former chief, as well as Ann Taylor, elder, and Bailey Taylor, a younger, of Curve Lake First Nation, and Alice Olsen Williams, also of Curve Lake First Nation and Trout Lake. And they had a conversation that included sharing their wisdom, their knowledge of growing old, and what they wanted to share with both Anishinaabeg as well as with settlers. And in the afternoon, there was a keynote by Dr. Sean Hillier of York University and Halapu First Nation. And some of the importance of the AIIGO gathering was its ability to reframe growing old and aging. So at the heart of AIIGO's importance was its ability to begin to reframe growing old and aging. In settler colonial contexts, aging is often associated with decline, isolation, and loss of value. And instead, the AIIGO offered a perspective rooted in Anishinaabeg and Indigenous knowledge, where aging is being seen in terms of recognition, as well as connection, wisdom, and responsibility. And part of the importance of AIIGO was to center Anishinaabeg and Indigenous research, and to make this central in comparison to, let's say, a traditional academic format. So that was an aspect of the gathering that both settlers and Indigenous attendees really appreciated, that the event very much centered Indigenous and Anishinaabeg knowledge. So some said it was very transformative, and some audience said it was unlike any other academic or public event that they had attended. So the format was very informed by Anishinaabe knowledge and elders and speakers.
That's great. And Alice, do you want to speak to maybe your experience in that workshop? And you were on the panel, and just being there and seeing the discussion and the people sharing, and maybe is that something that we should be doing more of in our communities to, promote the intergenerational learnings from our elders and from our Indigenous communities?
I've been taking part in things different ways, not in this way where three generations were together, but I've been involved in these kind of things, and the setting was of course, not like a reserve setting. So there wasn't that flow. There was that the way white people do things. You know, you kind of have to do that because that's how it's structured. And as much as we can, we slip in there and do things our way.
Well, that's so important. Debra, do you want to comment on that? I know you were involved in many events in the north and around, so maybe you can speak to that as well.
Yeah. When we come together in a good way, and we share from the heart, we share from the spirit. We share how one can support each other and one can assist where it is needed. When we're together, you know the conversation, you know the flow, that wink of the eye, that little laughter. A lot of people will think laughter is something of a gesture. But for us, when we reflect on laughter, to share with you, whether it's at ceremony or at a wedding or coming together, we were remembering the good times, the moments that we shared together. But when one ages, we must understand, how does one age differently? How does one age in community? It's not the outside coming in and sharing, this is how you do this, 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 and this. We don't want to have that, and our voices need to be heard in the way that the communication is shared, but to the level that is actually accepted to move forward, not taking the information, gathering it, and using it for betterment of the conversation. Studies are taken, surveys are completed, people are trying to engage, but then change the wording. So as one ages vibrantly, we ask, how does one want to grow older? Mm-hmm. How do we want to respect our values? And many of our community members, as Alice sees as well, come back to community as one ages, because they're coming back to our roots and our ancestry. At one time, it was taken away, but now the voice is coming out, and we have to have more advocacy for all of us coming together. All voices matter. All of our voices matter.
Mm-hmm. Yep, for sure. Do you have any, for either both of Nadine or Alice, do you have any suggestions on other ways that we can learn from each other?
Well, now this is my very personal thought or idea. This isn't how every Anishinaabe feels, but I'll just share with you what I think. I think that settler people think everybody wants to be like them. Everybody, the one and only way to do things is the way they do things. And sometimes we just want to be together, you know? We're not scrambling to be like white people anymore, in the sense that because in the days of our grandparents, life was very much controlled by Indian affairs. I mean, we had to get a pass. Our ancestors had to get a pass to leave the reserve. Apparently, our people couldn't even meet. We weren't supposed to be more 3 people meeting or having a get together, whatever. We couldn't hire lawyers. And we were starving. We were starving. We were starving to death. And that was an engineered way of white people to get rid of Indians. And, we could only, quote, succeed, unquote, in the eyes of white people and white institutions if we could be like white people. For example, if we could speak English properly, correctly, there's no way that Anishinaabeg could have even sent out their wisdom verbally because they didn't speak English. And even now today, a lot of our grandmothers and aunties, they don't speak. I mean, why are university people interviewed? There's no way a real what I call a real Anishinaabe who knows the language and knows those ways. There's no way they'd be asked to be on a panel. How would you even treat them? How would you treat them? I don't know. So I just don't believe in this palsy-walsy things going on in dominating culture.
Well, thank you for sharing that. It's
Pardon?
I said thank you for sharing your ideas or your thoughts and values, and I think it's so there's just so much there that's it's made me think much more in terms of the way that we do things.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But and I did tell Nadine what she should have done in her gathering was to have, after you eat, she should have set aside at least half an hour for us old people to have a little snooze. Would that be allowed?
Sure. That sounds a great idea.
Yeah, I would love that. I would like to thank you, Alice. Could I say a couple words?
Sure. Yeah.
I think following from what both Alice and Debra have shared, in terms of, so speaking myself as a settler, I'm of Cantonese and Hakka ancestry, born and raised in the city now called Sarnia, which is on the territories of the Three Fires Confederacy. How would I describe? I remember an elder sharing with me and the audience that was present that every time settler and Indigenous come together, it is a reenactment of first contact. And so that brings about a great responsibility of thinking of myself as a settler. And so I think building genuine and very honest partnerships as a settler with Indigenous persons. Partnering together is so important, because even while I would like to share that the AIIGO gathering was very successful on the account of both Indigenous and settler persons that attended, there's still so much that needs to be processed and discussed and worked through for a future event. And that it just requires a deepening of the centering of, in the case of Treaty 20, Anishinaabek knowledge and ceremony, and also thinking for Indigenous peoples that settlers partner with, in addition with Métis and Inuit. So there's always going to be, how would you say it, discussions around, what is working, what is not working, and how to make it meaningful, especially when, let's say, the funding, as it was in this case, is coming from settler organizations. In this case, the president of Trent University, as well as the Canada Institutes for Health Research, which are settler organizations. And so there is going to be the power relation there. And then through the partnership and relationship, how can that power be redistributed more equally and equitably in iterative ways? And those take really thoughtful, honest discussions, and they're not easy.
Miigwech, Nadine, for sharing, and the conversation has been very enlightening on all parts this afternoon. It's the storytelling, the story of the quilts, and the true story of each of the squares that come together. They're not squares; they're an actual story within the square of the beginnings, the life, the water. We're the care stewards of the land. And to this day, we are the care stewards of this land. And we take great pride of being able to take care of the land, not for just ourselves, but our future generations and those future generations and on those unborn generations, always thinking of our 7 generations and how we come together and how we live as Anishinaabes with our 7 grandfather teachings. Because when we walk the path, it's just instilled upon us as it's just who we are. We don't think about it, and we're no different than anyone else. We are all equal. And it's not the Western degrees that one has to their name. It's the lived experience. Who is in my vessel and who is in that I am humbled to be part of and be part of my vessel. And it's not just my vessel, it's a vessel that we surround each other with as well. So when one thinks and one feels that they're here to make a change, we need to ask first, am I doing it the right way? Am I engaging with the right individuals? And am I asking with respect? You must build the trust to have the respect, and the conversation will come. It's building the relationship, not saying, how can I do it tomorrow? It doesn't work like that. And until society as a whole can understand, together we can accomplish more. And on that note, blessings to each and every one of you. And miigwech, 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 miigwech. Alice, for your sharing, your wisdom, your stories, and bringing back that highlight of those quilts and the early years of sharing with your family. Those are memories that will always be with you, and then you can share for your future generations. So, miigwech to the EAPO and the opportunity to provide an amazing podcast.
Well, thank you for sharing. We have one last question we asked everyone, just as we wrap up, is what advice would you give to a senior or an individual to age vibrantly?
I don't know. I don't know what circumstances would allow me to tell somebody how to age vibrantly.
Yeah.
That would be very, what's the word? That would be very presumptuous of me.
I think I could go now.
Pardon?
Okay, go ahead. So go. I was just asking Nadine to go ahead.
I'm just looking at the question. The question is, what advice would you give to empower someone to age vibrantly? And a partial answer to that for me is both individual and collective. I think that within our communities, in each one of our communities, and we are probably members and circulate within different communities, I believe it is so important to create spaces where it is safe to share about growing older and aging, and to uplift, to support, and encourage, and to share knowledge and lived experience.
Well, I want to thank everybody for coming today and sharing, just being honest and sharing from your heart. I think everybody has really enlightened me in this conversation that we've had today. And Alice, your quilts give us a history and the background to where they generated the ideas, and especially that they all come from across Canada, and the voices that are the stories that are told from so many different perspectives and experiences in the work that you do and continue to do. I know that you'll be continuing to work with Nadine at Trent Centre on Aging. So thank you for taking the time to spend with us. And Debra, thank you so much for being co-host and sharing your experiences as well. So thank you all. And again, well, hopefully we can reconnect and have another conversation in our future episodes. So thank you all.
Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Aging Vibrantly, Conversations to Empower Seniors is hosted by Rayanne Rideout, produced by Lisa Whitfield, and edited by Todd Miller of the Podcast Experts. The original music was produced by Red Path Audio. We want to thank Help Age Canada for their financial support to produce this season's podcast. Please rate, review, and subscribe to Aging Vibrantly wherever you get your podcast. If you prefer to watch the episode interview, all episodes are available on Elder Abuse Prevention Ontario's YouTube channel. Be sure to check us out. We have also launched a new listener feedback survey. We want to hear from you, your comments and suggestions. Your opinion really matters to us. So take a moment to fill out our listener feedback survey now. You'll find the link in the show notes below. Until next time, stay vibrant.